Hey, what's up, world? We're back with the HPR Chronicles Podcast with Shakur and Smith.
That's me.
What I should say, it's the HPR in quarantine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, like everyone else, we're bringing it to you guys virtually via Zoom. You know what I mean? Thank God for Zoom. I hear everybody's using it, and you know they were even having some problems with hackers and stuff like that. But they came out with a fix for that. They said you can download the latest version or whatever. But that's cool. What's funny is I didn't even know about Zoom until this COVID-19 happened. I had no idea it even existed. Zoom.
Well, I mean, I guess for me, I've always used conference calls for work. So
Right.
We had Skype, and before that, we even had anyway, we would use Skype to video, but most of the time we don't video chat. We just simply talk to each other and share, share documents or training with each other. So that's how I got used to this.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know nothing about Zoom, man. Anyway, guys, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are a podcast about history, politics, and race from a swag perspective, which just means we're cool and we're not corny like some of your other podcasters or your newscasters. You know what I'm saying? We always try to just break stuff down, simple and plain. I'm a film director from Trinidad and Tobago, and I've always loved travel and politics and history. And Smith is a veteran of the Army Reserve that works for the VA, and he has a passion for the same. You know what I mean? And we always say it's not it's about truth. It's not pro any race, just pro truth. If the truth offends you, we're sorry, not sorry.
Sorry.
You know, and Smith was late again this week. You know what I mean?
It's just a lag.
Right. It's just a lag. So yeah, that's basically who we are, man. You know, we also cover current affairs. So, you know, because of what's going on, I think we're going to kind of start off every show until this is over, just kind of talking about where the state of the world is with this COVID-19. So we'll talk about that briefly. You know, I'll bring up some topics and we'll talk about what we think. And then today we're going to talk about redlining, which is a topic that I've always wanted to cover since we started the podcast, and it just kept getting pushed back and pushed back. And I found a really good article on npr.org that you guys could follow along with. I'm gonna read a couple of sections of it, and me and Smith will dig into it, you know. And I'm not even sure if I told Smith. I'm sure he probably pulled something up, but the one I'm going off of, Crispy, is npr.org.
Okay.
A forgotten history of how the U.S. government segregated America. Redlining. Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into it, let's see what's going on with COVID-19. It's funny, I just finished watching the daily briefing that the president and Pence and Dr. Fauci does, and the other doctor, and they were talking about you know, how well first on our show last week, if you guys can remember, we talked about how they would have to extend it from this 15-day thing to much longer than that. So now it's 30 days. It's no longer Easter, which we knew was unrealistic. Now it's the end of April. And I also think that that's unrealistic, and it's going to go further than that. What do you think?
I definitely agree. I'm thinking one of the worst case scenarios is like the end of summer. But I'm hoping for just before summer for some reason. You know, that's just feeling like if things are done right, people will really stay in. It's contained. And the numbers start to go down. I'm just scared we're going to barely reach our peak at the end of April.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least if we do, then we can start going back down. So, but anyway, that's why I think it's going to be hoping for beginning of summer, midsummer. So maybe around the 4th of July, if I can go after summer. Maybe we all can be out for the 4th of July. That's That's like a realistic answer that Trump should have given instead of this Easter thing. You know what I mean?
Right. And you know what's funny? Based on the graphs that I just saw that they presented, I would have to actually agree with you. I think actually July 4th sounds like a perfect date. You know what I mean? Because if you look at where it's going, as they said, we still haven't peaked. And I honestly think we probably won't peak for like another month. And then it'll probably start coming down. But Dr. Fauci was just saying how, when it comes down, it actually comes down much slower than it goes up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was even just saying once it does drop all the way back down to where we're not having any cases, we'll still see deaths for a little bit until it finally, oh my God. Like, so I kind of have to agree with Smith on this, and we don't agree much, but I have to agree. I have to agree with him on this one. That is probably going to be around June, July. I was actually thinking the same thing. I mean, if we're lucky, it could be May if we're lucky, man. But I doubt it. You know what I'm saying? I highly doubt it. And another thing I want to touch on too, all of the conspiracy theories, and I'm writing a note here. And one of the reasons why I was just talking about why I think it's spreading so fast, I want to get Smith's take on this. A buddy of mine, he works in the Army. He works for the Army, and he got a notice from the World Health Organization. He sent it to me, and in that notice, it talked about how you can catch it just from someone talking to you, like just from someone standing next to you talking.
Yeah.
And it was from the World Health Organization, and it's interesting that now, of course, he got it early because he's in the armed services. I mean, he's literally,
and they got to take those precautions.
Yeah, he's literally in active duty, so he accepted to me. And it's funny how now they're saying, yes, wear the mask and all this crap. And I told myself, had they told me this in the beginning, I would have been wearing that mask.
Yeah, I agree.
My mom mask, and I would have been wearing it had they said that from the beginning.
And
you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, if they would have, I want to say, it might have been a couple things that might have been part of it is people started to stock up on them and they didn't want to make the panic go even worse than what it, but there should have been a way to automatically prevent people from hoarding certain things. And maybe this will be a lesson for the next time. Because
it hasn't happened.
Yeah. That by emphasizing the one mask, I get that, and then people shouldn't buy things that are needed for healthcare experts or professionals or anyone dealing close to having to be in contact with the virus. But if masks were just realized right away, everybody, that might have reduced the number of people getting sick right now. I know they started blaming like you could touch your face, but at least you weren't talking to people. Because I remember reading, like you just mentioned, early on in Washington, I think they had just before their first quarantine, there was, but people knew about it and knew they weren't supposed to gather. And there was a church that wanted to have the choir continue doing their thing. And they did. And out of 60 members, 45 people ended up testing positive. Yeah. So, and everyone said there was no symptoms seen or whatever. But just like you said, just talking, just singing, and you're really blowing out those.
Yeah, those particles come out, man. And it makes sense how all those New York City officers got it. I mean, I was really shocked when 500 New York City, 20-something LAPD. Because they in their car talking and vibing and thinking, oh, we're not sneezing, so we're good. And those cops are wearing gloves and washing their hands, and they all still ended up getting it. Yeah. So it made sense when Varden sent me that thing going, yo, dude, this is like, it's not just if someone coughs or sneeze. Someone could be within 3 feet of you talking, and those particles can go in your shit, and you can, end up with COVID-19.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't they say that? But maybe you're right. They didn't want to cause any mass hysteria and stuff like that. It could, because I was always asking myself, if we shouldn't wear a mask, why is it that every time I see video from around the world, they all have on masks?
They all have.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
you know what's interesting is I had read something that, or maybe my cousin sent me something, but then I kind of looked into it, and I saw a report that said that the WHO might recommend everyone wearing a mask when they go out.
yeah.
I gotta say, I hit up my health, people I knew that might have access that I could reach them, be like, if you can get some masks, get them, because they might become important, real soon. And everyone was like, I don't know, I don't think so. I'm like, all right, but I guess I'm gonna have to pull out the handkerchief and.
Yeah, you could do that too, like a bandana or handkerchief or whatever. I mean, like I said, I started wearing mine today. Once they came out with that, I said, I'm not playing with that, man. And then I guess people are kind of, well, not I guess, I know that people that are not working are hurting for cash. So I actually woke up with and I want to post it on social media so that people to be just aware. I'll do it once we're done with this show. But I actually woke up with my corporate bank account hacked and negative because someone took my information and went shopping at Target in New York. You know what I'm saying? Brooklyn, New York. Yeah. Target.com, Brooklyn, New York. They use my stuff, and Chase. Now Chase is gonna, obviously refund everything. They have fraud protection or whatever. Yeah. But that's another thing. I mean, people are just hurting. So I don't know if they're going to like the dark web and buying info. You know what I'm saying?
So now's the time to change your passwords and whatnot to be prepared to.
Yeah, and all that stuff, man, and make sure. Which I had done maybe 2-3 weeks ago. Make sure that all of your accounts have third-party verification as well. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like someone tried to hack in one of my accounts to see, you know what I mean, like what I'm using to pay a bill. And what's funny is I have like several different accounts, and they used the account that I don't use to pay any bills. So I'm wondering if someone skimmed it when I went to one of the grocery stores here, and then sold it to someone. And so, you know what I'm trying to say? I don't know if the person, because a friend of mine works at Target, and she was telling me that the headquarters is in Minneapolis. So,
I think so, yeah.
So that's what makes me think the person was actually in New York that did it. So either they got my card information from maybe Amazon, which I removed my corporate cards off of there today and just left the personal cards, or maybe they skimmed it locally and sold it to someone in New York. Because when this happened to me years ago, someone at a gas station by LAX skimmed it, and they went back home to Missouri and went shopping at Victoria's Secret. You know what I'm saying? And when they did the investigation, the person had like a physical copy of my card. This was on Target.com. So they just had the information, and they were able to type it in, pay with this card number, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, man. So, just trying to make people aware of what's going on. Not everybody is like you who works in essential services, and not really hurting. Not everyone's like me in entertainment. Luckily, I have a little something where I can kind of sustain myself until all this blows over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But not everyone is fortunate like us, and a lot of people are hurting, man. And I was just a victim of someone that was hurting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just wanted to touch on that too. Just for our listeners to just be careful, be mindful, make sure all of your pay accounts and your accounts have third-party verification on it, so no one can just hack in and get your card information.
Good point. Stuff. Yeah, very good points. Yeah, I agree with you.
You know what I mean? Then I wanted to talk about.
But I would also
add,
if you aren't in the habit of, a friend of mine told me I should do this, is you should change your password periodically. Just like,
Yeah.
you know, if you're working someplace, a lot of times you're forced to do it, but you
Yeah.
never really do it as a, you know, as a just regular person or
Yeah.
civilian, whatever. But yeah, you really should, because it happens. Your
Yeah,
password will
man.
get hacked. Your
Yeah.
password will get sold, you know, username. And so I've
Right.
gotten alerts for it. But, and luckily I just kind of had to change just in general for different reasons. But
Yeah.
this is a good time to just go through, especially if you
Yep.
have time.
Yep.
Where else are you going? So
Right.
sit down.
We have all the
Take
time
care.
in the world right now.
Yeah.
You know, all the time in the world. But yeah, that's definitely a good point. And some of my creditors and accounts already do that. They'll periodically send me an email, hey, we require you to change your password every so
Yeah.
often. And then they'll make me do it like in the moment. But a lot
Okay.
of them don't do it. So but
Yeah.
that's a good idea, you know, to switch that out. One of the things I want to talk about too, before we move on to our topic, is all of the 100 to 200,000 could die thing. I mean, I don't know about that. If you think about way back in history when the Spanish flu hit, what it was like 50 million died or something like that. I heard that was horrible.
Yeah.
Let me fact check it real quick for the list.
Okay.
But I think the Spanish flu, it was millions.
I mean, it does feel
Flu
like
in
it's
1918, yeah.
it feels like it is a very high number, but I think they're taking into account the extreme cases of people
Mm-hmm.
whose immunity system is low. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Or the elderly,
Right.
and then I think it'll depend on how they do the numbers. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because you know how statistics are just as good as what it is you're asking and looking for. But
Right.
if it's related to it, I mean, because you had said earlier, the doctor said that after we consider it done, there could still be deaths
there
afterwards.
still could be deaths after it.
So it's just a matter of when we peak, how high are we, and how many people are really infected,
Right.
infected.
Right.
Because yeah, so that's the biggest thing is where will we be, and how well can they treat everyone?
Right.
And this is a shout out to my friend Derek. I talked about him back in Black History Month time. He's a judge in Milwaukee. He actually has and so we're just like sending him, you know, positive energy that he makes it through.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, he has it. You said.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. Sorry to hear that. Yeah. Hopefully he's asymptomatic or hits him just like the flu, and he could just get through it. Hopefully.
Yeah,
He doesn't
hopefully. I
have
mean,
any
he's already been in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I got to look for updates. Don't know everything, so I'm not gonna go too much. But just overall, people talk about, I don't know anyone who has it. I don't have any friends that have it. Well, I can tell you,
not true at all.
friends.
Yeah,
So,
and I think I know someone that has it too. Yeah, she was just telling me today that she finally got approved for her test, so she's going to one of the drive-throughs tomorrow.
Okay.
Here in town to go get checked. I mean, and even in our town, we have last time I told you was 16 cases and 12 in your little city.
Yeah.
I'm right next to Smith, guys, like, you know, 5-10 minutes away, not even. And I don't know if there's any in my little town, but we're all like in one little area, just different cities named different things.
And they're right next to each other.
Yeah, so I'm sure we have a few cases here. If Temecula had 16 and y'all have 12, there might be 6 here. You know what I'm saying?
And I want to say Temecula had a little bit more, or about the same, or was it less?
Yeah. Temecula had 16, I think, and you guys had 12, or was it 19?
Well, that's what it was, 16, 12, yeah.
Yeah,
so
19, 12, something like that. So, you know, it is what it is, man. But so back in 1918, when the Spanish flu hit, it was 50 million deaths around the world. 675,000 occurred in the U.S. That's crazy. 500 million people got infected. Of those 500
million, how many
million,
in the U.S. again?
675,000 died in the U.S.
Jeez.
From the Spanish flu back then. 50 million worldwide got it. I mean, obviously in 1918, technology wasn't the same. Science wasn't the same. None of that stuff was the same. I mean, so I think, and didn't it hit after that again? Didn't it come back around? I think years later, like decades later or something like that, if I'm
I
not
think
mistaken.
so, because I remember someone kind of mentioned it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't obviously as bad as it was in 1918. Yeah, because, again, technology, medicine, everything was completely different by the time it came back around. And I'm sure had this thing hit, in the beginning, I mean, back then, it probably would have been the same. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man. So another thing I want to touch on too, I talked to my friend in Europe today, in London, and he was telling me, he said, dude, they told us from day one to wear masks. I don't know why they give, and to me, it's interesting how in America we always get different information.
Mm-hmm.
He told me, one, they're on lockdown the same, and if they try to go anywhere outside of the store or anything, they're stopped immediately. You know what I'm saying? And two, they've been wearing masks since day one. And he also said that when he and or his wife gets home from the store, they actually take their clothes off at the door and put it in a bag and wash it every time. He said, man, dude, we're super careful. You know what I mean? He said it's just interesting how people do different things in different states. You know what I mean? In different countries. I was just saying their information is different. Like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing people are doing that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like you said, it wasn't presented in that way.
Right.
So no one ever took it to that extreme. And I got to say, when we talked one time, last episode, and we discussed like packages. And in my head, I was thinking, yeah, I should almost have to scrub down the package itself, before I open it. And then when I open it and whatever I touch after, or when I open it and everything I touch, I need to wash my hands afterwards. And if my final product, I may need to, I don't know, just depends on how it's in there.
You gotta wash your hands. Dr. Fauci was talking about that. He said, just open the package, leave the package outside, take the stuff out of it, put it down, throw the package away, wash your hands, get the package, wash your hands again. Because you remember, if let's say it's a plastic thing and the object is inside of it, you can either put it in the sun, he said, for a few hours, it'll kill it. He said, just get whatever it is, put it in the sun.
Okay.
For a few hours, it'll kill it. Or if you just put it down for a couple of days, it'll die on its own anyway. So just wash it. It's not like it's gonna jump from that on something else.
Got it.
So he was just like, just put it down, wash your hands, pick it back up, or the quick way is just put it outside in the sun.
Okay.
And he also was saying with food too, because people were like, and Sione did this when last time we went grocery shopping. People were like getting food and trying to like clean the outside of like the bread thing, because people touch that, put it down.
Exactly.
Yeah, so Fauci was saying this, and he said that's unnecessary, and you don't want to contaminate your food and be eating Clorox and alcohol and Lysol. He said, put your food down, just wash your hands. You have it for that period of time, just keep washing your hands and you're fine. So water kills it. I mean, think about it. It makes no sense trying to like
because that's what I was like thinking to myself, like, if you go extreme, what do you do?
Yeah, man. I'm darkening up. Let me open my blinds up a little.
Okay.
As the sun goes down, I'm losing my light here. Yeah, it's probably a little better. Anyway, man, so is there anything else you want to touch on with the current COVID news?
What do we say? So the numbers, the distance. And I gotta say, I am happy to see in stores that they're even putting lines where they want people to stand and how close, even to the person that's taking your money at the checker and stuff like that. So,
but if everybody was wearing masks, they wouldn't have to worry about that. Once again.
Yeah, but I still say I want the mask, but maybe you can make it, bring it a little close or whatever. But yeah, you're right. You're right.
Because today when I went to the store to get dinner, I was wearing my mask. I saw a lot of other people wearing their masks. There was a lady not wearing one. And so what are you supposed to do? Like wait till she moves away from the onions and then walk up. It's kind of, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of hard to go shopping.
Yeah.
But if everybody was wearing a mask, you could just go shopping.
You wouldn't have to worry. Yeah, that's true.
You know, just be organic, grab your onions. I ain't staying until I know what I want, and you get up out of there. You know what I'm saying? I was wearing a mask, so in that case, me and her we were fine because I was the only other person around. But if everybody was doing that, you wouldn't have to, you know, worry about the 6 feet or the 3 feet. And I'm not saying don't do the distance, still do it, but at least if you had a mask, especially in situations like stores, be much better.
It'd make it a little easier. Yeah, it'll make it a lot easier.
Much easier. Even when I went to pick up my editing system, there was a long line outside of the Micro Center for us to get in, but everybody was standing right next to each other talking. Not one person was wearing a mask. So whatever they tried to do in the store, we were doing it in the line. It made no sense. It's like,
I thought about the same thing. I was at Trader Joe's, and sure enough, there's a line, and I'm like, what's the use of even having to stop? Because we are all in line talking to each other, giggling. You ain't touching anyone, but it was, I didn't know, you know, but luckily we ended up talking to some people, obviously. Right. It just happened.
Right.
But I was just thinking, like, this is you know, it doesn't compute in my head to say, you know, keep so many people in, keep the crowds down to whatever. Well, then your lines have to be longer, you know, your distance between each other, and everybody was right on top of each other. Because if you didn't, there was a woman who actually tried to sneak in line in front of, you know, like not in front of me, but it was just like she tried to just bop on in on her phone, and luckily people called her out and she left. But you know, and then had the nerve to be like, "I'm sorry, I'm just kind of complaining." Had the nerve to kind of be like, "Oh my God, like I can't believe they're making a scene." Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, in Albertsons, they have X's down. So when everybody's going to check out, we are 6 feet apart, and people are adhering to it and looking down and making sure that they're at the right distance, which is cool. You know what I mean?
That's good.
Yeah, man, this stuff is crazy. Last thing I want to touch on real quick is all these conspiracy theories, man. People, please stop with the conspiracy theories. I talked to a friend of mine I've known for like over 10 years. You know, we just touch base to say what's up. You know, it's actually a girl I used to date like 10 years ago. We're still friends. And she was telling me about this whole, you know, Bill Gates conspiracy, how he wants to kill people with this vaccine. I mean, these conspiracy theories are just out of this world. And then my mom sent me something the other day from Facebook of some brother talking about it's not really a coronavirus. This is all from the new 5G networks.
I've heard about the 5G. I'm like, what the fuck?
That's killing people.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, right. Are you serious? Like, bruh. Like, some of the stuff just makes no sense to me. Some of the stuff makes no sense to me, man. And when I was talking to my buddy in London earlier today, he actually referred me to an online news source. And it's not a conspiracy theory news source. It's just kind of imagine CNN, but online.
Okay.
But really digs into the news, kind of like Vox does. And when we get off, I'll send you a link.
Okay.
And if you look at their news, they actually been following it from China the day it started.
Okay.
And showing the real news and how, because China is a communist nation, so it's always propaganda, and they don't tell the truth too often. So this news station is actually showing footage on the ground in China and what's really happening.
Okay.
How it's not, totally dead like they're trying to say it is. How their numbers are way more than they're trying to say it is. On how it really came from there. All that. People really need to stop with these conspiracy theories. It's just annoying in the midst of all of it to hear this nonsense, this ridiculous nonsense, and these people online saying it as if it's actual fact.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And people who believe everything they see online, they come and tell you as if it's actual fact. And you're like, I know I'm at home bored, but I don't want to hear this. I want to hear this nonsense.
I agree.
Like,
I've been seeing it on Facebook with the posts like that. The other thing that it's interesting is people want to post the positive numbers about how many people recovered, or
Yeah.
you know, and I agree that has to be, but it should be all relatable, because
Right.
I want to still know the deaths and I want to know the recovery together, because
Right.
that helps to know, like, there is a chance that if you get it, you'll recover. You know, how many people are recovering. That's a great number to know. But
Right. Exactly.
but you still got to respect to know how many are being, you know, are terminal, you know. So,
Right.
sorry, that's a lot of you-knows, and I'm blabbing. I'm trying
No,
to
it's
think
cool.
of,
No.
there was something else that I wanted to go on, was,
Mm-hmm.
and it just went out of my mind. Dang it. Anyway, I should have wrote it down.
Yeah, it's all good. If you think of it, just interject when I'm reading this thing
Redlining.
about the redlining. Yeah.
Okay.
It's all good. Yeah. So yeah, man, let's jump into this thing again. It's from the NPR, which a lot of people know is a very reputable site, you know,
Yeah.
news source or whatever. And the article is a forgotten history of how the U.S. government segregated America, AKA redlining. And like I said, I always want to cover this. It's not really a long read, so we'll just kind of give you guys the facts. And afterwards, you know, Smith and I'll kind of discuss some aspects of it, or even in between, because they have it kind of sectioned out. And I'll
What's
just
the
start.
article name again?
Yeah, it's a forgotten history of how the U.S. government segregated America.
Got it. Okay.
And if you want, Smith, you know, I could do like the first few headlines, and you could do like the last few or whatever, something like that. You want to
Sure.
go back and forth? Okay.
Okay.
I'll start off. It looks like it's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 6. So I'll do the first 3, and you can do the closeout.
The highlights, interview highlights, is that?
Yeah, exactly. Like total sections to read is 6. So I'm saying I'll do the first 3, and you can close it out if you want.
Got it.
Yeah, there's like three sections.
Okay.
So you could do on the FHA manual that explicitly laid out segregation policies, and then the 2 after that, which is the last 2. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll like start it off though.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So in 1933. Faced with a housing shortage, the federal government began a program explicitly designed to increase and segregate America's housing stock. Author Richard Rothstein says the housing program begun under the New Deal were tantamount to a state-sponsored system of segregation. The government's efforts were primarily designed to provide housing to white middle-class, lower middle-class families, he says. African Americans and other people of color were left out of the new suburban communities and pushed instead into urban housing projects. Rothstein's new book, The Color of Law, examines the local, state, and federal housing policies that mandated segregation. He notes that the Federal Housing Administration, which was established in 1934, furthered the segregation efforts by refusing to insure mortgages in and near African American neighborhoods, a policy known as redlining. At the time, the FHA was subsidizing builders who were mass producing entire subdivisions for whites, with the requirement that none of the homes be sold to African Americans. That's crazy. Rothstein says these decades-old housing policies have had a lasting effect on American society. The segregation of our metropolitan areas today leads to stagnant inequality because families are much less able to upwardly mobile. No, the families are much less able to be upwardly mobile when they're living in segregated neighborhoods where opportunity is absent, he says. If we want greater equality in this society, if we want a lowering of the hostility between police and young African-American men, we need to take steps to desegregate. You know, and what I want to do before I go to the next two sections, it's interesting how you see how something like that was blatantly done to like put people of color in like projects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then you'll have people, and I won't call any names, who like don't get it. They're like, oh, blacks are in projects, and that's what they want to do. You know what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say? And, and again, the way the circumstances were actually laid out, we just, as I just read, it was something that was systematically, purposely done. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that we don't.
I mean,
go ahead.
Oh, good. I was just
go
gonna say, out of it, I could see how, like they just said, they were building these neighborhoods outside of the cities, and they were putting just white people in them. They wanted to definitely,
and middle class and
to
lower class whites too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Crazy, man, crazy. Anyway, let me keep going.
Good.
So the next section is on how the Federal Housing Administration justified discrimination. The Federal Housing Administration justification was that if African Americans bought homes in these suburbs, or even if they bought homes near these suburbs, the property values of the homes they were insuring, the white homes they were insuring, would decline, and therefore their loans would be at risk. There was no basis for this claim on the part of the Federal Housing Administration. In fact, when African Americans tried to buy homes in all white neighborhoods or in mostly white neighborhoods, property values rose because African Americans were more willing to pay more for properties than whites were, simply because their housing supply was so restricted and they had so many fewer choices. So the rationale that the Federal Housing Administration used was never based on any kind of study. It was never based on any reality. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it just, let me read the last one, then I'll let you take over. Okay, so on how federal agencies use redlining to segregate African Americans. The term redlining comes from the development by the New Deal by the federal government of maps of every metropolitan area in the country. And those maps were color-coded by first the Homeowners Loan Corp and then the Federal Housing Administration, and then adopted by the Veterans Administration. And these color codes were designed to indicate where it was safe to insure mortgages. And anywhere where African Americans lived, anywhere where African Americans lived nearby, were colored red to indicate to appraisers that these neighborhoods were too risky to insure mortgages. Wow, that's deep. That's deep. I'll let Smith take over the next 3 sections, but again, I've always wanted to cover this because I've always heard of it. But like I've always said about one of the things I love about our show is that I learn as I study these topics. I get in depth and really understand these things that happen in our history that I've always heard about.
Oh yeah.
So anyway.
So on the FHA manual that explicitly laid out segregation policies, it was in something called the Underwriting Manual of the Federal Housing Administration, which said that racial groups
incompatible.
Incompatible. Oh my goodness. Incompatible racial groups should not be permitted to live in the same communities, meaning that loans to African Americans could not be insured. In one development in Detroit, the FHA would not go ahead during World War II with this development unless the developer built a 6-foot cement wall separating his development from a nearby African American neighborhood to make sure that no African Americans could even walk into that neighborhood.
Wow.
The Underwriting Manual of the Federal Housing Administration recommended that highways be a good way to separate African Americans from white neighborhoods. So this was not a matter of law, it was a matter of government regulation. But it also wasn't hidden. So it can't be claimed that this was some kind of de facto situation. Regulations that are written in law and published in the Underwriting Manual are as much a de jure unconstitutional expression of federal policy as something written in law.
Yeah, as government policy, as something in law.
Wow.
Yeah. That's crazy.
On the long-term effects of African Americans being prohibited from buying homes in suburbs and building equality or equity.
Equity.
Today, African American incomes on average are about 60% of average white incomes, but African Americans' wealth is about 5% of white wealth. Most middle-class families in this country gain their wealth from the equity they have in their homes. So this enormous difference between a 60% income ratio and a 5% wealth ratio is almost entirely attributable to federal housing policy implemented through the 20th century. African American families that were prohibited from buying homes in the suburbs in the 1940s and 50s, and even to the 60s by the Federal Housing Administration, gained none of the equity appreciation that whites gained. So the daily development south of San Francisco or Levittown or any of the others in between across the country, homes in the late 1940s and 50s sold for about twice national median income. They were affordable to working class families with an FHA or VA mortgage. African Americans were equally able to afford those homes as whites, but were prohibited from buying them. Today, those homes sell for $300,000 or $400,000 at the minimum, 6-8 times national median income. So in 1960, we passed the Fair Housing Act that said, in effect, okay, African Americans, you're now free to buy homes in Daly City or Leventon. But it's an empty promise because those homes are no longer affordable to the families that could have afforded them when whites were buying into those suburbs and gaining the equity that the wealth that followed from that. The white families sent their children to college with their home equities. They were able to take care of their parents in old age and not depend on their children. They're able to bequeath wealth to their children. None of those advantages accrue to African Americans who, for the most part, were prohibited from buying homes in those suburbs. Bam.
Wow.
And we've even kind of talked about that when we mentioned, about the whole appropriations. No, getting the 40 acres and a meal.
The reparations, yeah.
Reparations. When we talked about that, we mentioned how if they would have been able to keep that land, how much that would have been worth later on, and how it would have spread on. So that's, this actually this is another example.
It's crazy the way they did it, man.
It just kept people down.
Yeah.
So
hold on. When people say, oh, why do people still complain? And why do you got it's even? No, it's not even, sucker. From the beginning, it wasn't even. So we're still at a disadvantage. So don't tell me that it's even. It needs to be acknowledged and then made even, yes. You know what I'm saying? But it was never even.
1930s, 40s, 50s, if that's still going on, that's a long time. And there's another part I always just kind of always say is, if it wasn't for, 1964 is when the Civil Rights Act was put into place, which therefore that's when people felt and was treated more equally.
Right.
But before that, there was so much done. So to say in that short time, things changed so much, not at all. So,
right. And it was 1968, by the way, when they passed the Fair Housing Act. You had said 60 when you read it. So I just want the audience to know it was actually 68. Yeah. So it was basically 4 years after that, because that was 64, right? The Civil Rights Act. Yeah, so it was 4 years after. See, I mean, those suckers were slick, man. Anyway.
Okay. So on how housing projects went from being for white, middle, and lower class families to predominantly Black and poor. So public housing began in this country for civilians during the New Deal, and it was an attempt to address a housing shortage. It wasn't a welfare program for poor people. During the Depression, no housing construction was going on. Middle-class families, working-class families were losing their homes during the Depression when they became unemployed, and so there were many unemployed middle-class, working-class white families, and this was the constituency that the federal government was most interested in. And so the federal government began a program of building public housing for whites only in cities across the country. The liberal instinct of some Roosevelt administration officials led them to build some projects for African Americans as well, but they were always separate projects, but they were not integrated. The white projects had large numbers of vacancies, Black projects had long waiting lists. Eventually, it became so conspicuous that the public housing authorities and the federal government opened up the white designated projects to African Americans, and they filled with African Americans. At the same time, industry was leaving the cities. African Americans were becoming poor in those areas. The projects became projects for poor people, not for working class people.
Wow.
They became subsidized. They hadn't been subsidized before, and they became virtual slums that we came to associate with housing, public housing.
The people were poor; they didn't have money because all the industry went away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And initially, well, I'll talk about this after. The vacancies in the white projects were created primarily by the Federal Housing Administration program to suburbanize America. And the Federal Housing Administration subsidized mass production builders to create subdivisions that were white only. And they subsidized the families who were living in the white housing projects, as well as whites who were living elsewhere in the central city to move out of the central cities and into those whites only suburbs. So it was the Federal Housing Administration that depopulated public housing of white families, while the public housing authorities were charged with the responsibility of housing African Americans who were increasingly too poor to pay the full cost of their rent.
Right. So you had Section 8 and everything else that still goes on to this day. Wow.
So it's like and I almost have to say, living in Chicago, you kind of heard and saw that happening because I grew up in a town called Harvey. Last time I went home, there was this man who worked at, my father took me to buffet place. Anyway, the guy was saying how Harvey was beautiful, had theaters and all this other stuff, some stores, and the banks, and it was just beautiful. Like, it was all white, and people, wanted to live there. Now, oh my God, it's so bad. But as I was growing up, for the most, actually where I grew up, it was primarily Black, but you never felt like it was bad. You know what I mean? Like, people still took pride in their homes and whatnot, but definitely white people had moved out and moved further south out or further away from the suburb.
Gotcha.
People just keep moving. So they were in the city, and then they get to suburb, then they just move to a further one until they're like rural.
Right.
Almost
crazy, man. But I didn't realize that they, Black people were systematically put into projects like that. That's crazy. The way they did it. They have a different section of the government moving whites into nicer neighborhoods and
subsidizing.
And subsidizing it. And then, you know what I'm saying? Putting people in
and
Blacks.
then putting Blacks and then making it public housing and then subsidizing it. But you never hear about the subsidized on this side. You only hear about this and how how bad it is. But
Anyway, interesting topic. I'm glad we covered it. I mean, you guys can dig into it some more, but if you didn't know what redlining was, now you do, and you even heard how it was implemented step by step. So when people tell you, Black people and brown people are just, don't work and can't work and just want to be there, don't believe the hype. We were actually put there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was a system to the madness.
Yeah, there was definitely a method to the madness, and it was systematically done. You know what I mean? Did you have anything else you want to say before we close out?
No, I think think it's all good. And the redlining was certain in some cities you definitely can see how it was done. Like Chicago is a very segregated city, so and it's always been talked about how there's whites here, and then you have somewhat of a Black neighborhood, and it was it'd be seriously like across the street type of thing where it would seriously change and you didn't cross that street. You know what I mean? So
right, it's crazy. one thing I want to say before we go, I mean, growing up in Miami, it's interesting how the Cubans came from Cuba and they were given better housing opportunities than the blacks in Miami. They were all who was there and built it. They were all in the projects.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the Cubans, they had the nice homes and the middle class homes and all that. And yeah, man, it's crazy when I think about even growing up in Miami, how the Cubans were given those opportunities and the whites and stuff, and the blacks weren't. And the Cubans came from another country. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, damn.
It's crazy, man. Anyway, guys, that's our show for today. We'll see you guys next Wednesday. Don't forget to follow us on social media. It's the HPR Chronicles with Shakur and Smith. Don't forget to lock down, stay 6 feet, wear your mask, wear your gloves, keep washing your hands. Let's keep the social distancing going so we can get this stuff over with, man, and try to enjoy the rest of the year. I honestly don't want to be January 1st stuck in a house to celebrate the new year from the inside.
Yeah, that would suck.
You know what I mean? That would suck, man. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, it's the HPR Chronicles Podcast with Shakur and Smith. The HPR Chronicles Quarantine with Shakur and Smith. And we'll see you guys next week. Peace out. All right, Smith, I'll holler at you.
Take it easy. Be safe.